Now, let's move to page, excuse me. So when we're talking about the spiritual way of life, this is what we are talking about. And that is being into page 83. And that's the second paragraph. The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. That's not a theory, the spiritual life. We have to live it. Now let's go to page 84. This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory. We did this in step 4. And continue to set right any new mistakes. At first they were wrongs, now they're mistakes. As we go along, we vigorously commence this way of living. This way of living as we clean up the past. We have entered the world of the Spirit while yet you're still in a fleshly body. It says our next function is to grow in understanding of this power and effectiveness, and as we go out here to effect the lives of the other people that we're working with. What effect do you bring on people today? Do you have a pleasant effect, or do you have an adverse effect? When you think about that, how do you want to affect people's lives? You know, some people have an aura about them. When they walk in the room, they say, oh boy, there comes old such and such. And then they also walk in the room and say, oh, look who's in the room, look. That's how we affect people. So what effect do you want to produce? So the point is that we're talking about, it says, this is not an overnight matter. So in other words, you don't just work the steps and finish with them. It says this should continue for a lifetime. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, and resentment. Where do we do that? Step 4. When these crop up, we ask God to remove them. Step 6 and 7. We discuss them with someone immediately. Step 5. And we make amends quickly if we've harmed anybody. So what we're doing on a daily basis when we come in contact with people is working 4, 5, 6, and 7, 8, and 9 on the spot, making corrections right there on the spot, not when you lay down and go to bed. And then it says, now listen to this. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code. Or love and tolerance of some people is our code. A love and tolerance of just healthy people is our code. No, love and tolerance of everybody. Now here's the other personality change. We have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. That's what our book says. We're not fighting not to take a drink today. It says, we will, for this time, sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it like a hot flame, which is a normal reaction for pain. We can see the truth that a drink is going to cause us more pain than pleasure today. In the past, we couldn't see the pain for the temporal pleasure that it was going to get. Sense and ease and comfort. It says we react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened what? Automatically. We will see that our new life, our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We're not fighting it, neither are we neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we have been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. If the problem's been removed, then it does not exist for us. And the us we're talking about is the people that have recovered in the mind. You never ever recover in the body. Scientists have not figured out a way to deal with an allergy yet. The way that you deal with an allergy is total abstinence. But see, total abstinence has to take place in the mind and the body. Thus, we're not talking about physical sobriety, we're talking about emotional sobriety. And if you achieve emotional sobriety, that sobriety happens in your mind. It's been removed. You have a way of living that's going to allow you to spot, check, and correct your emotions right there on the spot before they even get to the boiling over pot, the boiling over point. This program will not allow you to build up an emotional pressure in your life that will even bring the thought of drinking back to you. If you work it on a daily basis and an hourly basis and you use a 10-step. But if you choose not to use the 10-step and you choose to go through the day and build up with emotional barometer, yes, pressure will burst anything. But this is a way for us to use the 10-step to keep our emotions at a level where it's not necessary to take a drink. It says, we're neither cocky nor afraid. We ain't cocky about drinking. We ain't afraid to drink about drinking. This is our experience. That is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. And the way we keep in fit spiritual condition is working the steps and sponsoring people. When we get to step 12, I'll talk a little bit about that more. It's easy to let up on a spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels, our accomplishment. Okay, I've got 10 years sober. I did this and I did this. Now it's time for me to live my life. Nope. This is what it says. We're headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We're not cured of alcoholism in the body. Listen, we are not cured in the body. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent upon the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Every day is a day we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It is the proper use of the will. Since much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, direction from him who has all knowledge and all power. So if he's got all knowledge and all power, how much you got? And if you have got a little bit, where'd you get it from? If we have carefully followed directions, we have begun to sense the flow of his spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God consciousness, but we have begun to develop this vital sixth sense. Remember the 5 senses that we have? Now we got a vital sixth sense. We're in the 4th dimension and we got a vital sixth sense. And the vital sixth sense is the sense of being able to understand through your mind's eye. This sense transcends any of the physical senses that you have. It says, but we must go further, and that means more action. Step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. I want you to pay attention how Bill kind of flips the script on you. He says we shouldn't be shy about this matter of prayer. Better men than us are using it than we are using it constantly. If we work at it and have the proper attitude, it says works if we have the proper attitude and work at it, we can use it. So what he's doing here is not teaching you how to pray, but he's giving you some definite and valuable suggestions in how you might teach yourself how to pray. Now he's going to start out telling you some things to do, which Jordan Charlotte calls them many suggestions. But I want to show you how he's going to flip the script. Because, see, this business of prayer, when we look at it, prayer is like telephone, meditation. One receives, doesn't transmit. The prayer is the transmission part, and the meditation is the receiving part. Which one you think is the most important? I surmise to you that listening is probably more important than talking. After all, how many of you saw the movie Bruce Almighty? Well, if you ever get a chance to see that movie, watch it. This guy in this movie, God makes him God for a day. And the part I want to make mention of is all these people are sending up prayers to him. And what he does is grant everybody's prayer. And when he does, he causes utter chaos. Everything just goes awry in the world. And the point about that is this, is that God has a plan for all of us. And when we send up these vain, selfish prayers like I did, like I said, I knew two prayers. One was a foxhole prayer, God get me out of this, I'll never do it again. And the other one was a Christmas tree prayer. Give me this, give me that, give me this, give me, take this, just. And when we think of that, Bill tells us that doesn't work. So he starts off in giving us some suggestions on how we can teach ourselves a new prayer life through meditation. The Oxford Group people were great at this. One of the most significant events in the annals of our history of our program was the fact that Ann Smith and Henrietta, they were in the Oxford Group. And they knew Dr. Bob was a bad alcoholic. And Dr. Bob joined the Oxford Group. And he was sitting there, and one day he says, I got something I need to share with the group. So I've been sitting here and hadn't shared this. And he said, I want you all to know that I'm an alcoholic. Everybody knew he was, but he's finally come out and admitted it. So Henrietta says, well, Dr. Bob, I'm going to pray. We're going to send up a prayer for you. And so how they would do it is open the book of James in the morning and sit in silence with pen and paper. And they would record every thought that went through their mind, good, bad, or indifference. And they would write down the bad and the good, and they would wait on the good stuff. So Henrietta was sitting there, and she come back next day, and she says, Dr. Bob, I got an answer to my prayer. She says, I don't understand it, but this is all that it said. It says, you can't touch alcohol, not one drop. She says, I don't understand it, but that's the message that I got. 2 weeks later, here come Bill Wilson to Akron and explain to him why he couldn't touch alcohol. The nature of the disease. Happens just a coincidence? I think not. So these people were very good at meditation and prayer. They would meditate, and then they would ask for a prayer for someone else. They were very keen on not asking for own selfish prayers. Nothing for themselves, they would ask for other people. So when we look at this, speed up just a little bit. We look at the first suggestion that says, when we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Do we owe an apology? Have we kept something to ourselves which should have been discussed with another person? Sounds like, there again, we're going back over a 10-step, doesn't it? But this is what we're looking at, how we did our day. This is a second opinion on how we worked the 10-step that day. Have we kept something to ourselves that should be discussed with another person at once? Were we kind and loving toward all? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the times, or were we thinking of what we could do for others, or what we could pack into the stream of life? But we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflections, for that would diminish our usefulness to others. After making our review, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. Now, all that takes is just a couple of 3 minutes to 30 seconds before you lay your head on the pillow. All you got to do is remember what you got up and did that morning, whether it was meditate, and your day will go through your head just like that in chronological order. And if there's something wrong, it'll stop. It will stop on whatever it is that you did wrong, automatically. And when it stops, then that's when you look at, do you owe an apology? Could you have done it better? It'll automatically do that. When you get in that practice of doing this, it'll happen like that. Now, the reason we do this at night is because everything is on a 24-hour cycle. That's why it says one day at a time. Because if you don't do it at the end of the day and the beginning of the other, the crud that you bring from the previous day, you take it into the next morning. It's simple as this. It's like a hangover. When you bring a hangover from the previous day of drinking into the next day, you see, when we don't do this, this is just like a spiritual hangover. We're going to bring the crud from that previous day of selfishness, dishonesty, self-seeking, fright into a new day. And if we don't do corrective measures, we're going to pile that stuff up. And when we pile it up, guess what it's going to do for the emotion barometer? So therefore, this is what we do at night. It says, on awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. Not make them, just consider them. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance. For after all, God gave us brains to use. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. That's what we do in the morning. Why it's important for us to clear our thought process of wrong motives and dishonesty in the morning. This thing up here is what's going to carry you through the day. We take great pains when we wake up in the morning, putting the cat out, feeding the dog, looking at our clothes, looking at our face. We spend all the time in the world, but how much time do we spend on this? This is what's going to carry us through the day, not how we look. And then we break out the house in a rush, hit the motorway, and rush hour traffic, and someone pulls over in front of you, and you give your whole life over to that sick person. And you go to talk about him and his ancestors. And you follow him all the way past your exit, cursing him. And you ain't made it to work yet. Your day ain't even started. That's because you haven't taken time to have this directed by something else. So this is the most important thing. Remember, we're going to make about 5,000 decisions throughout the day. If they're based on self, remember it says sometime in the past we made decisions based on self that later put us in a position to be hurt. So if these decisions are based on self, guess what? We're going to have a painful day. And we say, boy, I had a bad day. But if the decisions is based on clearing your thought pattern of wrong motives and placing them under the care and direction of a higher power, you're going to minimize those problems. And the ones that you do have, they're going to have solutions to them. Because you're going to be able to spot, check, and correct them right there on the spot. Does that make sense? Sure it does. Now, here's the next. In thinking about our day, we may face indecision. We may not be able to determine which course to take. Here we ask God for inspiration, an intuitive thought or decision. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. We're often surprised how the right answer will come after we tried this for a while. Now, if I'm going through the day and I got a decision, so we're so vain, so we'll take this thing up here, we treat it like a computer. We shoot it through here, comes out that side, says we haven't had that one before. We'll pull it out and run it through that again. Says, I told you we hadn't had that one before. We pull it out and run it through that again. Then it says, fool, I told you we don't have the answer to that one. Then something, it says, relax and take it easy. Then I just stop. Something would tell me, say, why don't you call Brian? I said, Brian, man, this is what's going on. The immediate process of me stopping trying to solve that problem is taking me away from that problem. Right then, I've cut that problem in half and gave part of it to Brian. Brian's not emotionally involved. He can say, well, Larry, why don't you try this? I said, I said, okay. And I get busy doing something else. And while I'm doing something else, not only what Brian has asked me to try, a solution comes to that problem. It says we relax, we take it easy, we don't struggle with it. But we will not try to get outside of self to solve a problem. We'll try to solve it ourselves. Not only will we try to solve it ourselves, we'll try to make it fit our benefit, and we'll try to make it fit where it don't fit. Because sometimes what we want to do just cannot be done. And especially, it can't be done for our benefit. So we need to just leave it alone. We repeat the serenity prayer and really a lot of times don't even consider what we're asking for. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change and the courage to change that I can. And the only thing that we can change is us and the wisdom to know the difference. But yet we'll go through the day and we'll try to change every damn thing we come in contact with. Don't even think about stopping changing our attitude. We got to change the receptionist. We got to change the person in the store. We got to change everything. In every meeting, that's what we'll say. God grant me surrender. There's separate things I cannot change. Consider that. And we go through the day trying to change everything we come in contact. So we relax, we take it easy, we don't struggle. We'll often surprise how the right answers will come after we try this for a while. What used to be a hunch or occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. Still being inexperienced and just having made conscious contact with God, it's not probable that we're going to be inspired at all times. We might pay for this presumption in all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. Nevertheless, we find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. We come to rely upon it. Now listen to this. We usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer. I thought we was praying. Is that Bill and ease you into meditating? Now you're going to pray. He says prayer and meditation in the steps, but what he uses is a process to teach you how to meditate and listen for whatever it is first. Now you're going to conclude the process with a prayer. The whole suggestions that he has been teaching you is how to meditate and listen for the corrections and how to make it. Now he's going to show you how to teach yourself some prayer. We usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer that we be shown all through the day what our next step is to be, that we be given whatever we need to take care of such problems. We especially ask, now we're asking for freedom from self-will and are careful to make no requests for ourselves only. We may ask for ourselves, however, if others will be helped. We're careful never to pray for our own selfish ends. Many of us have wasted a lot of time doing that, and it doesn't work. You can easily see why. Now, the last minute suggestion that he gives you is at the bottom of the page. As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful. You see, the two processes that he's talking about in the meditation is when you get up in the morning, before you get out, and then the prayer. Now, as you're going through the day and you get out there, it says, as we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action. We're constantly reminding ourselves that we're no longer running the show. Humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, "Thy will be done." We are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. We become much more efficient. We do not tire so easily, for we're not burning up energy foolish as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. It works, it really does. We alcoholics are undisciplined. So we let God discipline us in the simple way we have just outlined. But this is not all. There's action and more action, because faith without works is dead. The next chapter is entirely devoted to step 12. Let's look at the process, what Bill is trying to show us with the 11th step. Because, remember, we admitted that we were powerless in step 1, and we made the decision in step 3. Bill says we cross the bridge of reason to to the shores of faith. Step 1 is willingness. Step 2 is believing. Step 3 is the decision. Steps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 is the action that we take on a daily basis. Program of action, not a program of meeting. Step 11 is the results that we get. Step 12 is faith. And then we know. Step 3, we turn over our will. That's why these 2 steps are the pillar of the program. Step 11, we receive God's will. Because it says in step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact, praying only denotes singularity for the knowledge of His will and the power to carry that out. And that's where we receive. We're powerless here, we receive the power here by getting the power to carry that out. Step 12, as we're going into, is the faith and the service. I thought it was so eloquently put last night when Timmy said this, and that is true, about step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. You see, when we get results and we work this process, then we get faith. That's why it says faith without works is dead. We have to take our faith back over here to the new person. We can't make him willing. Hopefully booze has made him willing. But we can assist him and help him in believing. How are we going to do that? By explaining to him in detail what this problem is and demonstrating these principles in all of our affairs as we are working with him and sponsoring him. Carrying this message, you can carry this message 3 ways. You can carry the message when you sit in meetings and talk about how the steps has changed your life. You can carry the message when you get up and tell your story, how the steps have changed your life. Or you can carry the message by when you sponsor other people. That's the part of demonstrating the principles in your affairs. Sitting up talking in the meeting ain't demonstrating no principles. You're just talking about something. Somebody's got to see you walk this thing through a daily basis and see your deportment and how you deal with your fellow man. That's a demonstration of the principles. And if you have a sponsee and he's with you, he is watching you and how you demonstrating the principles when you're dealing with sick, healthy, or people indifferent. If he see you lose your cool and arguing and cursing everybody, what type of principles is that? You think he want that? And you know, a lot of us were sponsored by telephone and by meetings. We have sponsees that call us and we'll have meetings at the meeting, but they don't see how we live our daily lives. That's not sponsorship. That is not sponsorship. This is what it says. In working with others. It says this, on page 100. This business of having people calling you and talk about their problems and meeting them at the meeting for an hour, that's not sponsorship. It says, both you and the new man must walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. If you persist, remarkable things will happen. When you look back, we realize that the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands were better than anything that we could have planned. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances. So if your sponsor is following the dictates of a higher power, guess what he's sending to you? Not his ideas and his concepts, but he's sending to you the principles and how he's practicing these principles in his life. You know, I thank God that Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob preserved this program in this book. And he passed it along to Joe's sponsor, 1951. 1951, Joe's sponsor was locked up in prison with over 100 years against him. And in 1951s in the States, they didn't have a parole system. If you got 100 years, that meant 100 years. And this guy was locked up. You see, he was the son of a minister, and he had been in and out of the prison system ever since he had been 14 years old, and he was 39 years old when he ended up in prison. He had only been free out of those years for 6 years of his whole life. And here it is now, he was in a prison looking at over 100 years in the state of Arkansas, and also they had a hold on him in Dallas. And he said that morning it rained and they didn't go out to work. And someone had put a copy of this book on his bunk. And when you're in the penitentiary, you read just about anything that you can get your hands on. And he said he read this book, Charlie Clark, and he said in this book he saw a formula by which he could change his life. And he said he'd be a fool not to take it, looking at the dire condition that he was in. Now the point I'm trying to make is we're talking about saving a life and changing life. He wasn't worried about drinking no more because he was thinking about changing his life. Living, because he knew that the life that he was living, that he could get killed any day. So he took the formula and changed it and started helping people down there in prison. And he had a spiritual experience. And when you live in a prison, your life is just like in a fishbowl. People can see the change. And as he changed his life, the prison officials saw that, and he started teaching other prisoners to read, and eventually gave him a pardon, a clemency, so he could get out. Now here's the part that Charlie says. Charlie says that Charlie was a tall guy, about 6'3". And he says he was in the prison, and there was this little old bitty guy named John. He's a little wimp. Everybody just beat on John and just misused John. And he says he never really liked that, you know, and he was always for the underdog. So he says he knew when he did this that he wasn't going to be able to get rid of John. He said one day he woke up and he told the people in the prison, see, Charlie was very well respected in prison. He was a professional safecracker. He was a sharp guy too. He was. His alcoholism made him quit using it because he wasn't dependable. But anyway, he woke up that morning in prison. He told the guys in prison, he said, I want you all to get up off of John, and I want you to stay up off of him. I want you to leave him alone. And he says when the people left John alone, John attached to him like a little puppy. And he says, John walks up to him and says, Charlie, he says, man, I really appreciate you helping me out. He says, what I want you to do, he says, Charlie, would you pray for me tonight? And they went to bed. He says, next morning, as soon as the gates was open, John's right up to him. Hey, Charlie, how you doing, man? You know, like a little puppy. And then he says, you know, Charlie, he says, man, you didn't pray for me, man. He says, I felt it, and you didn't pray for me last night. He says, I tell you what. Well, you don't have to pray for me, Charlie. He says, could you pray for yourself? And they went to bed that night, woke up next morning, he walked up, he says, John walked up to him and says, Charlie, I can just see it. You didn't even pray for yourself last night. He says, oh, I'm sorry, Charlie, I apologize. He says, you know, Charlie, you're a very strong and respected guy in the penitentiary. Everybody looks up to you, and you yields a lot of power and a lot of weight. He says, what will a guy like you need with God? He says, I'm the weak. He says, I'm the person that need God. I'm the weakling. And Charlie said, when that little guy told him that, he says, you got to become weak enough to want to become strong. As long as you're strong, you don't need no power. And he said when that guy told him that he was strong and he was weak and he was the only one that needed God, he said that had a profound effect on him for a little guy to tell him that. And Joe talks about this in his story, about how he was sitting in a mental institution and a guy that did not have a drink problem, that had been locked up for 30-something years, told him, say, you know what, Joe? Say, if you don't drink anymore, you don't have to come back here. And this guy was in a mental institution, been locked up for 30 years. It's the people that we think that's insignificant in our lives that gives us the most important message. And you know, when we're talking about sponsoring people, we get important. We ain't got time for the little guy. We got all the power. And the very people that we don't want to go back and help is the one that has the strongest message for us. Because those people keep us ever remindedly of being humble to remind us where we came from. And you see in this process here, we can't give them our faith. They got to take the action to get their own faith. But we can demonstrate our faith in a process to help them believe. One more thing I want to leave you with before we close. There's a movie. The name of the movie is called The Scarlet and the Black. And the movie consists of Gregory Peck and Christopher Plummer. And the movie is about when Germany occupied Italy. And Gregory Peck plays this Catholic priest, and Christopher Plummer plays the German general. And Gregory Peck is smuggling Jews out of the country, but the German general can't catch him. So every morning as he walked across the courtyard, this German general is up there in the balcony with a pistol pointed at Gregory Peck, wants to shoot him, but for some reason he cannot bring himself to shoot Gregory Peck. So he calls Gregory Peck in, and he tells Gregory Peck, he says, I know you're smuggling these Jews out, but I'm going to catch you. And Gregory Peck says, man, says, why don't you turn your life over to God? He says, that's your God. I don't believe in that. Don't talk to me about that. So since he couldn't kill Gregory Peck, what he did was kill Gregory Peck's best friend. And Gregory Peck was mad, formed a deep resentment against this German general. And he was smuggling people out more vehemently at this time. And then Russia came and liberated Italy. And in the process, they put this German general in the dungeon. And he was down in the dungeon, and he sent for Gregory Peck. And Gregory Peck came to see him, and he says, I want you to do something for me. And Gregory Peck says, you want what? He says, yes, I want you to do something for me. And he says, what give you the gall to ask me to do something for you after you did what you did to my friend? He says, I want you to smuggle my family out of this country because I know you can do it because you smuggle them Jews out. And he says, what make you think that I'm going to do this? He says, cause the God that you believe in won't have you do any different. So the point of the matter is, he didn't believe, but he believed that Gregory Peck believed. And guess what Gregory Peck did? Smuggle his family out. And guess what happened to the guy in the dungeon? He was converted by the demonstration of the principles that Gregory Peck saw that he said that he believed in. You see, a demonstration of these things that we talk about is more important than talking. Remember, talk is the cheapest of all gifts that is endowed to man. Talking a good program does not help people. Another thing, as we work this program, what we are doing is practicing these principles in our affairs, as well as you do not get better at things unless you teach them to somebody else. Any teacher will tell you. And I end with this. I thank you all from the bottom of my heart because in all of these seminars, I get the greatest benefit. Because of what I continue to endeavor to learn and to enhance my knowledge by teaching it. That is the greatest way that you can stay is by teaching what has been given to you. So I ask you as you go out from here today to continue on in this masterful, wonderful program that has been given to us by a God of our understanding and be able to affect a human life in a positive way, not just an alcoholic. Because how we affect people, and they're going to know us by the aura and how we treat people, and then when they find out when we take the flesh off and we die, and our obituary is going to say, member of Alcoholics Anonymous, they're going to say, oh, man, that was a very nice guy. He's a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. What do you think that's going to do for our fellowship? When they see, and they're going to say, man, there's something to that. So as we go out from here today, continue on in the faith and in the service that has been given us. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I know you guys know Joe, thank you, and Charlie, thank you, and God bless you, and thank you for your time and attention. Thank you.